This morning, big money energy. You didn't know that was a thing. That is what Democrats are putting off after a blockbuster event overnight. We're getting a look at pictures from inside the event that raised $26 million, though it was a closed event, so we're only getting still pictures and reporting from insiders about what actually happened. CNN's Arlette Saenz live at the White House. Luckily, we have you to tell us what went on because, of course, we don't have moving video from closed fundraisers.
Yeah, John, and President Biden's advisors are really hoping that this show of force from Democratic presidents last night will help build momentum as this election is kicking into high gear. The campaign touting the fact that they raised more than $26 million from this one-night event alone, and they're hoping that this will add to the cash advantage that they currently have over former President Donald Trump as they're gearing up for that November fight. Now, President Biden, President Obama, and President Bill Clinton spent about an hour with late-night host Stephen Colbert really laying out the stakes of this election, trying to warn of the threat that Trump poses to the country. They never named Trump by name, according to the reporters who were there in the room, but they did issue very stark warnings. President Biden saying that democracy is at stake and pointed to the January 6th insurrection, saying that there was no president in the United States that day as Trump sat here at the White House as that unfolded. The president also said in his remarks, quote, "We're at a real inflection point in history. This guy denies global warming. This guy wants to get rid of not only Roe v. Wade, which he brags about having done, he wants to get rid of the ability of anyone in America to have the right to choose. All the things he's doing, they're so old, a little old and out of shape." And the campaign also has provided a video from last night. Reporters who were in the room were not allowed to record any video from this event, but the campaign is trying to highlight a bit of a lighter moment between President Biden and Colbert. Take a listen.
Saginaw, Milwaukee, Phoenix, Vegas, Atlanta, the Philly suburbs, Manchester, Dallas, and Houston. Donald Trump, as far as we can tell, has just been trying to win a third championship at his own golf course. My question to you, sir, can voters trust a presidential candidate who has not won a single Trump International Golf Club trophy? At long last, sir, have you no chip shot?
Well, look, I'd be happy to play. I told him this before when he came into the Oval, when he was before he got sworn in. I said, I'll give you 3 strokes if you carry your own bag.
But jokes aside, the fundraiser also laid bare some of the frustration within the Democratic Party over the president's handling of the conflict between Israel and Hamas. Hundreds of pro-Palestinian protesters gathered outside of Radio City Hall before and during the event, and the presidents were actually interrupted several times from protesters in the hall itself, some mostly protesting the war in Gaza, but also one relating to Russia. And it was notable that President Obama took a moment to address those protesters as well as Biden did. And Obama said that they need to not just talk, but also listen. He said that just talking is something that the other side does. And it really highlights the fact that this is an issue that the Democratic Party will continue to grapple with heading into November's election. Now, the president is continuing his push in New York City today. He's expected to meet with top donors at a spring retreat of the Biden National Finance Committee. Senior campaign officials, I'm told, will also be briefing top donors on their strategy as they're really trying to have this all hands on deck moment as they're preparing for that face-off against Trump in November.
Arlette Saenz at the White House. I have to say, the old and out of shape line and the joke about Donald Trump carrying his own bag, sir, I hadn't heard those before, actually. And that's an interesting pivot for President Biden to try to turn the issue of literal fitness into a campaign issue for Donald Trump.
That's what you call a burn. Yeah, I think that's
the word I was looking for. That's what the kids say.
Burn. And guess what? There's a bit of a response here. Donald Trump's campaign is confident, they say, that they can surpass Biden's $26 million haul. Sources saying the Trump campaign hopes to raise $33 million at a fundraiser next week. What is unclear this morning, whether or not former First Lady Melania Trump will be there. She's pretty much been largely absent from the campaign trail. That may soon change. Kristen Holmes is joining us now. What can you tell us about this April 6th fundraiser?
Yeah, so we'd previously reported on this fundraiser. It is going to bring some of the biggest GOP donors to Palm Beach for what they say is going to be record numbers. They say it's going to be more than $33 million, as you noted. But again, it is still early. We are still waiting to see what actually comes in, and they've released those numbers on a day that Biden was announcing that he was raising more than $25 million. But this is significant really for three reasons. One, overarching, when you talk about more than $26 million, when you talk about more than $33 million, this is setting up to be one of, if not the most expensive general elections in history. But this is also particularly significant for Donald Trump for two reasons. One, as we have reported, he has been facing somewhat of a cash crunch on the campaign trail. They are bleeding money out. This is going to help them, even if it's not $33 million, millions of dollars from some of the richest GOP donors are going to help the campaign. The other reason why this is so significant is the fact that we had seen so many of these big donors really turning their back on Donald Trump, or at least sitting on the sidelines during that primary season, waiting to see who the nominee was, or in some cases just hoping that there was going to be an alternative to Donald Trump. What this signifies is that the Republican Party is really coming around the former president. They have decided that this is their candidate, and they're going to back that up financially as well.
You've got some new reporting now about the role that Melania may play, because we haven't been seeing her on the campaign trail recently.
Well, Sarah, the role of her is still a big question mark. I mean, that's what the reporting is. Right now, we still don't know what role she's going to play. We've seen her on the campaign trail 1.5 times. And I say half times because one of the times we saw her was when she was casting her vote in the primary in Florida. She was alongside her husband. She did speak a few words. She said, "Stay tuned," when she was asked whether or not she was going to be back on the campaign trail. So I give her a half time for that. The only other time we've seen her on the campaign trail was during his actual announcement back in November of 2022 at Mar-a-Lago, which is where she lives. She wasn't even present at his Super Tuesday event, which is arguably the biggest event he has had so far, which was also at their Mar-a-Lago home. Now, sources close to the former First Lady say she determines when and what she does on the campaign trail, and they don't have any insight into whether or not she's actually going to join until she does, in fact, make that decision.
Pretty unusual that the spouse of the former First Lady is not by his side for all of these things. We'll have to wait and see what happens. Kristen Holmes, thank you so much. Fred?
All right, let's discuss this now and more with Mara Gillespie, founder and principal of BlueStack Strategies and former press advisor to then House Speaker John Boehner, and CNN political commentator and former Democratic South Carolina State Representative Bakari Sellers. All right, good to see both of you. So, Bakari, you first. A Biden testimony is probably not top of mind this morning for the president. Instead, that huge fundraising haul of $26 million last night here in New York. So what kind of momentum does this give his reelection campaign? Was there something said, some, inspiration inside, or perhaps even the demonstrators outside, concerned about Palestinians, which will shape Biden's messaging this point forward?
Yeah, there's no way to put a damper on what the president was able to accomplish yesterday. What you saw was a party unified. I mean, you had Bill Clinton, you had Joe Biden, and you had Barack Obama all together raising money for a unified effort to defeat Donald Trump. I don't think you can pay George W. Bush any amount of money to stand next to Donald Trump. You have a fractured party. You have Nikki Haley, who garnered 1/3 to 40% of the Republican voters as she was running her failed bid in the primary election. And so you have a unified party versus a fractured party. And even more importantly, one of the things you pointed to was $26 million is, I guess the older folks say, is nothing to shake a stick at, right? Mm-hmm. So $26 million is a lot. We're outraising Republicans, and all the money that Donald Trump is raising selling Bibles is probably going to his legal defense fund.
Yeah. And Mara, Biden's, competitor Trump, he criticized this event, as elitist, among other things. He instead showed up at fallen NYPD officer Jonathan Diller's wake. Yet next week, Trump wants to make it his goal to raise something like $33 million at a Florida gala. So not elitist here. What is his message or the goal?
Well, his message is all over the place. He can't decide which one he wants to be: angry at Biden for outraising him or having this event, and then also wanting to compete with him. The biggest win for Trump, which I say this, recognizing that this has unfortunately been viewed just through political lenses, was those headlines where it was, Biden, Clinton, Obama have glitzy event, and Trump attends the funeral of a fallen hero. He wanted that headline. And I say that because that's who Donald Trump is. It's not looking out for we the people. He's looking out for himself. And that fundraiser next week is about himself because the RNC is bleeding money. And his campaign is also now having to be tapped into where he has to sell shoes. He has to sell Bibles because he's not been a person who wants to go out and make donor calls. But he's going to have to now because he needs the money.